Hello, Nigeria. There's no better place to be, so don't you ever change that dial. What's up, everybody? It's Kabam Zasukwa, and you're watching Hello, Nigeria.
Welcome back to the show. Now, as I mentioned earlier, last week you saw a package where Oliver and I sat down with Adejuwon Soyinka, the editor-in-chief of BBC Pidgin, and also the investigative journalist who got the ban on codeine in France in Nigeria. Now, this week we are actually catching up with Oluwatosin Adeyemi, who is the editor-in-chief of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, because, of course, we do need to get two sides to this story, and we've also been seeing some breaking news lately as well. So, first of all, welcome, Oluwatosin. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Now, first of all, recently in the news, we have heard that zott Pharmaceuticals in Lagos and two other pharmacies in Kwara have had their ban uplifted. We also had some mixed messages going on about bans in Kano. So let's clear the air on exactly what's going on and where the state is at right now.
Okay, so after the May 1 declaration by the Minister of Health, on May 7th, NAFDAC, having reviewed some certain documents presented to it by the pharmaceutical firms that were implicated in the documentary, took regulatory action to first seal up the liquid manufacturing units of these firms. One was zott Pharmaceuticals, second was Peace Standard Pharmaceuticals in Ilorin, and Bioraj Pharmaceutical in Ilorin. But after having follow-up meetings with them, considering their documentation, both the production and what the quantities of the opioid they still had in their care, it was decided that they could proceed on with an administrative sanction to them. Now, so following that, their liquid lines have been opened, but they still cannot manufacture cough syrups containing codeine, okay? So they can go ahead with their other lines of production. Now, the four pharmaceutical firms that were mentioned in the media are not actually pharmaceutical firms. They are patent medicine stores that were branded as pharmacies. And then the Kano State Pharmaceutical Inspection Committee had gone in there. That was around April 17th. And then it was in the news at about April 24th that they had been sealed. So they were not pharmacies.
All right. Since they were not pharmacies, I think the pertinent question we should ask is, as an individual who's not in the medical field, how can I know which one is a pharmacy? There's a certain term that we seem to fly around in Lagos or in Nigeria, chemist. I'm going to the chemist shop. So how do you know that this one is not just a chemist, this is a pharmacist? Okay,
so the Pharmacist Council of Nigeria has a few things that you can look out for. First, when you go into a pharmacy, there is the license of the pharmacist properly displayed so that on entering you will be able to cite it. Number two, the license for the premise itself will be properly displayed in the premise. Now also the Association of Community Pharmacists of Nigeria went a step further to say, even before you step into the premise, you will see outside of the premise a green cross. Now, the green emblem is on a white background and it should always be lighted. So if you don't see that before, when you're about to approach a pharmacy, be sure that it's not a registered pharmacy.
Now, green emblem outside?
Yes.
License inside for the pharmacist?
For the pharmacist.
And the license to use the premises?
To use the premise,
Great.
Yes.
Okay, now, Oluwatosin, I'm sorry to say this because I know a lot of people have expressed that they are happy about the uplifting of the ban, including Atiku as well, who came out to say that he is also happy about the uplifting of the ban. However, you just stated that the line of codeine production is still banned at these pharmaceutical companies, but codeine is not the only drug that is abused through pharmacies in Nigeria. There is Valium, there is Tramadol. My list can go on, and surely and clearly we already know that there is no ban right now on those particular products. So how can we ensure, because these pharmacies were clearly banned for a reason in the first place, how can we ensure that they are not now going to be sending other products through their back doors like Tramadol and Valium? Okay,
awesome. One of the things that the Director General of NAFDAC, Professor Adeyemi, said, and I quote, is that the ban is for a period so we can get our proper structures in place. So it's not going to be forever because there are people who require it for therapeutic reasons. Now, one of the things we'd look at is between now and the end of the year, we're pressing, and we've heard the Minister of Health himself say that he will ensure that open drug markets are closed by the end of the year so that we can begin to implement our national drug distribution guideline. That was the premise on which drug distribution would be sane in Nigeria. It's been postponed, as we've said in several fora before now, for up to 8 times since it was put together in 2003. This is 2017. We had 2 deadlines in 2018. We had 2 deadlines this year before it was finally moved to December 31st, 2018. We're hoping that the Minister of Health keeps to that, and once the National Drug Distribution Guideline comes into force, we will be able to sanitize movement of drugs. So, for example, we will know how many tablets of diazepam at 5 milligram came in through our borders or were formulated using the active pharmaceutical ingredients here in Nigeria, who the distributors it went to from the manufacturing firm. Will also be able to trace who the distributor sold the product to, and then we'll also be able to trace from the pharmacies themselves. Community pharmacies have a poison booklet, a form where they record every prescription that goes out. Now, sometimes, even when they provide a single dose, which covers the patient before they're able to access their care provider, they also make a note into their poisons disposal book. Now, when that is properly done through the instrument of the National Drug Distribution Guideline, we will be certain that no medicine goes outside into illegal channels. In fact, that was what I wanted to ask you, because one of the fears a lot of people expressed when the ban took place was the fact that we're going to be giving the black market a boost in business. So how easily accessible is it currently? What is the current situation? How easily accessible is it to get medication from the pharmacists into the black market? Okay, so from pharmacies to the black market, it's hard. The reason is this. Most pharmacies, community pharmacies now, because I think that's the end we're most focused on, most community pharmacies have very little in terms of disposable income that they can even throw into that end. So, for example, most of them would have their procurement going through a distributor, right, who also purchases from the firm itself. Now, most of the community pharmacies do not have any business with the manufacturers. Most of them get from representatives of the companies or from distributors who are located close to them. Our major challenge is there are certain products that would have come in across our borders that we cannot trace, right? And then there are certain unscrupulous individuals who also take products from the manufacturer and divert them into the open market. Yeah. Now, that is where our major challenge is. And that's why we're hopeful that if the Minister of Health, if he stays true to his word, demolishes open markets in Lagos, Kano, and other areas by the 31st of December this year, we will be able to curb that.
I think this also brings to light the fact that our borders are porous, and we've talked about this countless times on the show, that we need to strengthen the lines. You know, we need to strengthen our borders. We need to reduce how porous they are. Can I chip in something on that?
So after all the investigation done by NAFDAC, they also came out to say that the quantities of codeine currently with the manufacturers, right, and the quantity of products that had been manufactured and could be traced, right, could not account for the consumption going on in the country.
And that's because we have a lot of illegal products coming through our very porous borders. But that's not the only issue that I have with this entire situation. Another very big issue for me is fallacy in Nigeria when it comes to structure. You just stated that the ban on the pharmaceutical companies was temporary until we had a policy in place, right? Now, this ban has been uplifted, but we're not going to see a policy until the 31st of December, 2018. So what exactly does that mean?
Okay, so the ban that was uplifted was on the manufacturing element, okay, not on production of cough syrups with codeine. So the ban was that these units, the NAFDAC needed to contain the units where those products were being manufactured or moved from, so that they could prevent anybody taking out records or falsifying records at that time. So that when they were doing their investigation, their audit trail, they could say, actually, this was the volume of product that moved from here to this point, from this point to this point. So when they uplifted that, they technically opened up their ability to produce other syrups.
Yeah.
There are other syrups being manufactured, not just the cough syrups with codeine. Okay, so what they did was to let them...
There are other syrups that also contain codeine.
No, what I meant is there are other syrups being manufactured by the firms. For example, vitamin B complex syrups for children, paracetamol syrups for children, and co. Okay, so when, they allowed them to proceed with business for their other lines of products, but the ban on cough syrups with codeine remains in place.
And they're going to eventually lift up this ban, right?
As soon as we have the appropriate structures in place.
So my question is, are there no alternatives for codeine syrups?
There are. Very, I mean, some not as problematic as dextromethorphan, for example. What the idea, or rather the alternative that has been chosen by our Ministry of Health for now is cough syrups with dextromethorphan. Dextromethorphan is not as addictive as codeine, but is also addictive at severely high doses. And its effect is also a bit different. Codeine, you have euphoria. With dextromethorphan, patients feel they experience they have an out-of-body experience. So they become disconnected from reality, which is still dangerous anyway. But other products that can be used include menthol. You know, those are products that act on the surface of the throat to calm the nerves and prevent the coughing reflex.
Okay, now can you also give us an update on what is being postulated in the drug control bill and also the mental health bill? I was actually looking at the 2018 budget today and the allocations, and under the health projects, there was nothing to do with mental health, yet we have this upcoming bill. So let's talk about how we're going to take these bills and actually apply them to society.
Okay, so for now, the mental health bill and the national drug control bill have not been passed. They're currently at the phase where we're looking at them. Now, what the mental health bill does is provide a structure to take care of people with mental challenges or mental diseases. So, for example, it also gives us an access to have a board that provides for the care of patients with addiction problems, also for patients with mental health problems. Now, it also provides for funding those centers and special centers around all the states in Nigeria and ensures that they are properly funded. Now, the National Drug Control Bill also does something similar, brings together all the agencies that oversee drug distribution or importation. So you have NAFDAC, you have Pharmacists Council of Nigeria, you have NDLEA, and then there's now a board made up of all of these people. Now, there's also a problem with the bill as it is currently. We're hoping to make more inputs with time, but there is a caveat on that bill. In the mental health bill, the executive secretary, his qualifications are properly stated, okay? For the National Drug Control Bill, while we're seated doing all of this discussion, the executive secretary of that board is not defined. It's left to anybody, you know. So we have people who are skilled, who understand the drug cycle, who understands how medicines are compounded, how they move through our systems, how they are administered, how to treat the end results and all of that. And yet the description of the executive secretary for that council is left blank. Now, that's on the side. Those two bills are very good bills. But you know, the biggest challenge we've had in Nigeria are not bills. They're not properly funded. And then when they're being implemented, there are a lot of vested interests that truncate their appropriate application. We hope that doesn't happen with these ones.
We don't just hope, we have to ensure that that doesn't happen with this, because this is such a serious issue and we all have a role to play. Very
important. So one of the things, for example, that I would push to the Minister of Health is to ask him, for example, when he says that the open drug markets will be closed by December 31st, 2018, I want to ask him, has he gone round the states where we're having coordinated wholesale centers? Do they have a certificate of occupancy to those lands that have been allocated to them? What are the timelines given for the buildings to be erected? What are the timelines given for us to have appropriate sitting between NAFDAC and the ports authorities and ensure that the channels for drug distribution are properly set up using an ICT framework. What are the plans? You know, you don't just come out and give us blanket statements.
Talk is cheap, actually.
Very cheap.
To see steps,
so what are the steps being taken in that line?
Okay.
What has he done recently?
Before we let you go, we're heading over to the news center. Let's talk about quickly, what can we as individuals do? We know that the codeine, the addiction, is basically affecting lots of young people. How can parents and individuals, what are the things we need to look out for and the things we need to report?
Okay, so one of the things that we advise is for parents, once in a while, when your kids are still at home, check their bags. You will likely find paraphernalia for smoking and all of that, or injecting medicines in their bags. Also, speak with the children. There's nothing like a heart-to-heart talk, right? Nothing as good as that. When you speak to the kids themselves, it gives them a sense of participation. It also gives them a sense of their social problems are being considered during the whole framework that we're looking at. So talk to children about the dangers of drug addiction. If a child has already begun to abuse medicines, it's not the time to call them out on social media or throw them under the bus. No, it's a time to get them help as appropriate. So get them to a professional, okay? And secondly, if your child is abusing pain medications or you notice that pain medications are suddenly disappearing off your shelf, please go speak to your pharmacist about getting a drug box that you can use to seal your medicines, and also speak to the dependents in the house so you can identify who is taken out of these medicines.
And let's not also forget about also making sure that you pressurize when it comes to human development, because at the end of the day, we are seeing the most prevalent abusers of drugs in Nigeria are young women and youths. And that is such a shame, because it all falls back to the fact that there is such poor human development that this is an escape route for so many people. Until we have better human development, this problem is going to be ongoing.
True. I should just chip this in. Very, very significant. Sorry, it skipped my mind. Last year, having looked at the spate of youth abuse of medicines, the Young Pharmacists Group of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria went in and sent in a proposal to NAFDAC. And so currently they're executing a project across 4 states as a pilot. And then they'll scale it up to all of the 774 local governments within about, I think the timeline is about 3 years. Yeah, so what they're doing is social skills and helping young people develop skills to resist using drugs.
And that's exactly what we need. Now, we do have to head over to the news center. So very quickly, Oluwatosin, before we let you go, how can people contact you if they want to speak to you more on this issue at hand? Okay, so on Twitter, I'm at UNLTD51. And on Instagram, I'm at Adeyemi. Okay, there you go. UNLTD51 and Adeyemi. Over to the news, and when we are back, we do have more in store with you. Stay with us.
To enjoy more of these our ogbonge videos when you just watch, press this button to subscribe on top of our YouTube page. You go love am.